While they're only about the size of a crow, peregrine falcons have been clocked at speeds of up to 220 miles an hour. That makes the peregrine falcon, according to some, not only nature's finest flying machine, but also the fastest animal on the planet. Their scientific name of Falco peregrinus means falcon wanderer, and at one time peregrines could be found wandering the skies over North America from coast to coast. That changed in the 1960s because of a chemical insecticide known as DDT, and by 1968 there were no peregrine falcons east of the Mississippi. Perhaps that's why there was a mixture of excitement and concern when, on a warm April day in 1998, two of nature's top guns battled it out in the skies over a Wisconsin power plant.
Whoa! I'm afraid there's going to be a fight to the death here.
The battle was between two male peregrine falcons over a female peregrine and this nest box, where the younger of the two male birds often tried to find refuge to escape the attacks from its elder.
He's just buzzing by, and whenever he can, he's actually knocking that young male.
The two male birds fought over the female for more than an hour in a dogfight that often went from over 1,000 feet in the air to just feet above the ground in a matter of seconds.
Look at this, look at this, look at this, look at that.
The conflict ended when the younger peregrine tried once again to find refuge in the nest box. This time, however, the older falcon followed him into the box, and the fight was decided in favor of the older, stronger, and more experienced falcon when the younger bird retreated.
I believe that we have a lot of birds imprinted to the nest boxes. This is what they used to breed on cliffs, but they don't recognize cliffs as potential homes. So because there's only one box here, there's a tremendous amount of fighting for that one nest site. I mean, this is my own personal belief. Some people disagree, but...
Bob Anderson has been working for over 20 years on a dream. His dream is to reestablish a population of peregrines in the Midwest. Currently, there are only 2 pairs of peregrines nesting in Iowa, and both pairs breed in urban environments. One pair nests in downtown Cedar Rapids, and the other pair nests in the city of Des Moines. In Des Moines, it's clear how imprinted peregrines have become to man-made structures. The tiny alcoves that ring the top of this insurance building are the nesting site for the Des Moines falcons and bear a striking resemblance to a row of nest boxes.
We have peregrine falcons breeding close to man in cities and on power plants like this. But we all hoped 20 years ago when we began this work that these urban birds would actually cross over and go back to the cliffs. It hasn't happened yet, so it appears as though they're imprinted to man-made structures and to the nest boxes themselves. So I think we have to break this pattern. We have got to raise birds that look towards vertical walls of limestone cliffs as their breeding home. I'm going to ruin a pair of pants.
Bob has placed 25 nest boxes across the U.S. since beginning his work to reestablish falcons in the wild. 15 of those boxes, like this one at Dairyland Power, are along the Mississippi. Since 1983, Bob figures he's raised somewhere around 250 falcons that have been released in various cities across the U.S.
We were asked to supply birds to many cities this year, and I've turned them all down because I don't think that will give us a true wild population. And like I said, we're trying to direct our efforts now to the wild, so we're taking a big financial gamble.
What has brought Bob to this point in his dream hasn't been without personal sacrifice. In 1989, he took a leave of absence from his job at 3M in Minnesota to pursue his dream full-time. He sold his house and moved to northeast Iowa after discovering what he felt was the perfect peregrine habitat. And even though he has set up a nonprofit organization to help pay for the cost of raising falcons, he's gone through most of his life savings.
If we had continued our work with supplying birds for city releases, which we've been doing for the last 10 or 15 years, actually supplying birds for city releases throughout the Midwest, we probably could still be sitting financially sound because there's a lot of interest in the cities. However, the problem is there's not a lot of interest like there are in cities for supporting a wild population. The city peregrines have many followers.
Bob's base of operation is on this farm in northeast Iowa near the town of Decorah. In what used to be a hog shed, Bob keeps 6 pairs of peregrines for breeding purposes. A radio masks and at the same time gets the birds used to human sounds.
When you have birds in captivity, be it a hawk or a falcon or any other wildlife, you don't get natural or normal behavior. They're stressed. And most birds will not become good parents in captivity because of the stress factor. So a lot of times what I do is I will let them incubate an egg for a few days, then I steal it from them, put it in the incubators. When I hatch it, I'll even raise the baby for the first week before I give it back to the parents. And I think it's just because I'm concerned that being in captivity, being stressed, they might not be the best parents. They might not sit on the eggs properly, they might not be or feed the babies properly.
The peregrine eggs are about the size of small chicken eggs and are a mottled brown in color. Each egg is marked for identification and weighed so it can be individually tracked in a journal Bob keeps. Through years of experience, Bob knows that if it's developing correctly, each egg will lose 15% of its weight during the time it's being incubated.
That 15% is actually found to take place for all the way from the ostrich egg, which is the size of a grapefruit, to a hummingbird egg the size of a pea. They all lose about 15% of their weight loss from the onset of incubation to the pip. So we just try to follow those guidelines. That it indicates to us that the embryo is actually being incubated properly and developing properly.
Once the eggs hatch, Bob's plan is to build a rock-lined room where he'll raise the birds until they're old enough to be released into the wild. He's hoping that the young birds will imprint on rocky cliffs rather than boxes made of plywood.
We're not looking for spots, looking for like a flowing, twisting, like a cloud almost that's moving a little bit. There, I see some movement. This is a live embryo.
Hey.
This one's, I'm almost positive.
It's also part of Bob's plan to release the falcons he raises here in Effigy Mounds National Monument just north of Marquette, Iowa. Some of the mounds in the park are bird effigies. Built by Native Americans over 1,000 years ago, they bear a remarkable resemblance to a peregrine falcon in flight.
I've learned that when you release birds, you want it to be in a very prominent spot. In case a bird flies across the river, they can see the release site and see where the food is put out for them and come back. It makes it for a safer release. You lose less babies. So this area is very prominent. It's also pretty large rock, and it's in just immediate proximity of all the historic cliffs where the peregrine nested, both in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and in Iowa. And then also, because it's so wooded, I don't think we'll have predation by great horned owls. This does not appear to be great horned owl habitat. So for that reason, it just appears to be a safer place to launch off some birds and get them to survive.
If Bob's 20-year dream really does come true, the turkey vultures that ride the updrafts along the Mississippi River Valley will soon be sharing the skies with peregrine falcons. The falcons kept for breeding purposes will lay more eggs to replace those taken from their nests, increasing dramatically the number of falcons Bob can raise in a season. He further increases the number by making sure the eggs are fertile through artificial insemination, a process that Bob repeated close to 20 times this spring.
I would think that probably 1/2 to 3/4 of all the birds we produce are actually produced by artificial insemination. Only about 1/4 or 1/5 of all the pairs of falcons that are put up for breeding naturally copulate. So in order to justify or in order to fertilize their eggs, you have to artificially inseminate. It's a tool, it's a technique that, it's an aviculture method that helps justify and helps produce the birds that we're so interested in making.
With the help of some friends, Bob performs the procedure on his kitchen table and begins by milking the male peregrine. Only a person with the proper permit can handle or keep birds like falcons, hawks, or eagles, and most would never attempt such a procedure. Because the tissues are like wet toilet paper, it can be dangerous. So Bob practiced and perfected his technique on chickens, turkeys, pigeons, and grouse.
Oh, we lost it. Yeah. It's right there. It's right there. Okay, get another two. Yeah, I know.
The amount of semen collected is hardly more than a drop, so to increase the odds of having fertile eggs, it's examined under a microscope to check the sperm count. If it's determined that the count is high enough, the semen is taken to the barn where it is injected into the female.
Dave, why don't you come over here? It's a bit difficult on us, stressful on us, because we don't normally like to handle the birds at all. We like them to be in their chambers and fed remotely and watch through one-way glass. But if we didn't today do that artificial insemination, we would not have gotten any fertile eggs. So it's kind of a push. Okay, that's far enough. Go ahead. Go ahead, push it, push it, push it. Okay, pull out. We just made babies.
From his 6 pairs of breeding birds, Bob hopes to get up to 20 fledglings. It takes 33 days from conception for the eggs to hatch, and each falcon will cost $1,700 to raise to a point where it can hunt for itself. Right on schedule, 33 days after being laid, the egg is about to hatch. After hearing Bob speak at their middle school, a group of students is visiting the farm.
If you look, you can actually, hear it? Oh, yeah. This one, you can see where it's starting to break up. This one should be coming out in just a little bit. So you heard it, so didn't you? All right.
The students decided after their visit to present Bob with a check for $1,000, money left over from an Earth Day fundraiser. It's money that will take the edge off some of Bob's financial concerns. While the students did choose a good day to visit, their timing wasn't perfect. The students had to return to town just as the chick began to peck through its shell, a process that lasts for hours and takes great effort as the chick rotates inside the egg and chisels away at the shell. A fiber optic camera actually goes inside an egg where you can see the baby peregrine using its beak as it struggles to free itself. This incredible first-time footage is courtesy of a German television company that is producing a documentary on peregrine falcons.
Every time he pushes, he stretches, and that cracks the egg.
John Dingley, longtime friend of Bob's and head of the board for the Peregrine Project, which supports Bob's work, guides the fiber optic lens. Before attempting this delicate procedure, John practiced on a variety of different kinds of eggs.
He's moving so fast that I can't keep up. He's going to be out any second now.
Finally, the chick pushes its way out of the shell, wet and exhausted from the effort. Bob gently cleans the chick, looks it over, then announces like a proud parent,
Perfect. That's an absolute perfect peregrine falcon.
The next few hours in this young bird's life are critical, so Bob quickly returns the chick to the incubator to dry out and fluff up. He then records the birth in his journal, where he will keep track of the chick's progress, just as he had kept track of its progress as an egg. During the night, Bob moved the young falcon to a tray with a heating element. By morning, what was pink and wet is now white and fluffy, and calling to be fed. At Bob's place, there's only one thing on the menu: ground quail with a light saline sauce. He feeds the bird through a small hole in a plastic bag. The e-chop sound Bob makes mimics a mother peregrine signal that dinner is served. It seems to work because the chick responds by opening its mouth. In the wild, peregrines nest on cliffs and lay their eggs on gravel, much like the gravel that lines the bottom of the tray. Since there is no mother peregrine to keep the chick warm, Bob has placed a heating element in the tray. If the young falcon is cold, it will move closer to the heat, and if it's too warm, it moves further away.
But I'm going to give him just a little bit more saline. That is one healthy baby peregrine. He's holding his head up already. And
As As the size of Bob's brood of baby peregrines rapidly grows in size, lunchtime takes on the appearance of a preschool cafeteria. Since one baby peregrine looks pretty much like another, until they're old enough to be banded, each chick is color-coded with a splash of color, helping to identify who's who in the nursery. While Bob is off tending nest boxes, Dave Kester, a local resident interested in Bob's work, lends a hand with some of the feeding frenzies. Before the chicks have a chance to imprint on humans, however, Bob returns them to their parents. The adult peregrines immediately begin to care for them, as though they had just hatched.
Okay, you wrote the numbers down?
Yes, I did.
To help pay for the expenses of raising peregrines, Bob uses grant money he receives for research conducted at the 10 nest boxes he manages. This particular baby falcon is one of 2 whose nest site sits on top of the containment dome of a nuclear power plant in Red Wing, Minnesota. The leg bands are an identification card of sorts that this young bird will carry for the rest of its life. Once it's banded, Bob draws a sample of its blood.
We take blood for 2 reasons. One reason is to take a small sample of blood and just maintain it and archive it for genetic research. We have a really wonderful scientific opportunity here. We're starting with ground zero. We're creating a population from ground zero. It's a wonderful, unparalleled scientific opportunity. The other blood sample is actually taken for heavy metal analysis. Heavy metals that are associated with the electric power utility industry, the burning of fossil fuels, mercury, chromium, arsenic, selenium, things like that.
Bob has found that the stacks on power plants are good places to put his nest boxes. So much so that all 10 of the boxes he's managing are on power plants. To the peregrines, the smokestacks resemble cliffs where they have traditionally nested. Another reason the power plants appeal to the falcons is because they are located near a body of water. The water serves as a coolant for the power plants and provides a hunting ground where falcons can easily catch their prey, which is other birds. It's a good arrangement for the peregrines and for the power companies who use the blood samples Bob takes to measure the effects of smokestack emissions on the environment.
We finally brought the peregrine falcon down to the Mississippi shores of Iowa and Minnesota and Wisconsin by utilizing this unusual marriage of peregrine falcons and power plants. But also it's created quite a bit of interest and enthusiasm for the peregrine falcon, and these power plants and the biologists and the communities also feel as though that the falcon should also be on the cliffs. So it's kind of giving us a shot of adrenaline to carry on our final mission, and that is to get the birds back in the true wild also.
The King plant in the city of Bayport, Minnesota, is the location for the first power plant nest box. Northern States Power has given May, the female peregrine who nests there, her very own web page, and over 100,000 people have gone online to see May live on the bird cam. She's become something of a star, and there was quite a turnout when Bob banded her 2 offspring, Prescott and Smoke. May herself is an offspring of a bird that Bob raised and demonstrates how aggressive peregrines can be in protecting their nests. She's so aggressive that brooms are used to keep some distance between May and Bob as he returns her chicks to the nest. However, when Bob turns to leave, May swoops in for an attack. Another camera angle rolled at half speed shows the whole story of how she first clips the head of the cameraman who is filming Bob, then, after swinging away from the stack, is able to align herself for a straight shot at Bob.
All right.
As with all dreams, reality sets in. Bob's plan for a large rock-lined room in which to raise his falcons is reduced to a box 2 feet high and 4 feet deep. The strain of how to pay the bills begins to take its toll when grant money necessary to the project is delayed. Bob's troubles are compounded when a potential contributor decides against funding the project, and his truck breaks down. Add to that the challenges of trying to raise an endangered species in captivity, and you get some idea of how difficult a dream can be.
Yeah, I think there's times that, to me, you just feel that you just can't go on.
Like a few weeks ago, we had a power outage and lost a baby. And the day before we lost the power, that baby was fine. It was moving and marked on our charts that it was hatched and alive and doing well. And the day after the power outage of 6.5 hours, the embryo did not move. So, I mean, that's quite a blow. I mean, that's one more bird that won't be released on a cliff. It'll be one more digit or one more number that people won't get to see or hear about. Yet it's a lot of things that are out of our control, you know. But every time we do have a loss like that, you feel like you kind of let somebody down. Somebody that's expecting to have an X number of birds will get -1 when things like that go wrong.
Of the 20 fledglings he hoped for, only 9 chicks make it to the rock-lined box. But that's 9 more than would have made it without Bob's work. From the time they hatch, it's only 40 days before the young falcons will be testing their wings, so time is short. The next step is to prepare the release site. 2 hack boxes will offer shelter to the young falcons until they can fend for themselves. Each box weighs around 70 pounds, and after being secured in place, is surrounded by an electric fence to keep out predators like raccoons and minks. Before the birds are taken to the site, Bob prepares radio transmitters that will be attached to each falcon's leg. Held in place with cloth thread, the transmitters will eventually fall off, but while in place will give Bob a little peace of mind.
Well, I want to know if anything happens to a bird. I want to know if we're going to have any predation on the birds, if you know, if any were killed by a great horned owl or if any were killed by a mink. If we could just monitor them for the first, you know, maybe 72 hours once they're released, that's the critical time.
It's hard to believe these young falcons will be flying in a little over a week. Until then, they will be held captive in their new homes, time well spent as they learn to recognize local landmarks.
Well, this is kind of the culmination of about 20 years of dreaming. You know, a lot of help from a lot of people and friends. We finally have falcons that are going to be released on a cliff on the Mississippi River and try to create a true wild population. It's the final goal, and it's a needed goal and a necessary goal in peregrine recovery.
Nine days after being put in the boxes at Hanging Rock in Effigy Mounds National Monument, the falcons are set free. For the next few days, they exercise their wings before taking to the air. Bob's concerns over predators are for naught, as all 9 birds spend the next 4 weeks safe at Effigy Mounds before beginning their migration to South America. The birds will be returning in the spring, but it will be 2 years before they're old enough to mate, and 2 years before Bob finds out if his dreams have been realized.
It's pretty rewarding, it really is. I mean, we're actually making a serious attempt here to create a true wild peregrine falcon. And to see all the excitement and see all the interest and see the people that are walking miles out there to come and view that, it's a pretty remarkable event. It's happening. It was a daydream a decade ago, and now it's coming to fruition.
We got babies. We have babies.
Bob Anderson's dream of returning peregrines to cliffs along the upper Mississippi has become a reality.
We've got 2 babies.
It's been 3 years since his first release of young peregrines on a cliff at Effigy Mounds National Monument. And now 6 pairs of falcons are breeding on cliffs where none had been nesting before. The 2 adult peregrines are on this cliff because of Bob. The female came from XL's King Power Plant in Bayport, Minnesota, a nest site Bob has been managing since he began pursuing his dream in 1988. The male is named Gunner, and he was part of a second group of birds that Bob released in 1999 at Effigy Mounds National Monument, some 75 miles away.
It's an incredible event. Here we are sitting on a 250-foot cliff banding rock peregrines. 25 years in the making.
Because of Bob's work putting nest boxes on towers at power plants, there are 220 more peregrine falcons on the upper Mississippi River. However, it wasn't until the release at Effigy Mounds National Monument that any peregrines were sighted nesting on cliffs.
I've always felt that we couldn't just hang our hat on the urban peregrine falcons, the birds in the cities, especially with the problems that they were causing with attacking people and dive bombing. So we knew we had to get them back home. And so thanks to a lot of help from friends, doing the artificial inseminations and rearing the babies and then taking them out to the cliff hack site, we programmed some birds that actually looked to cliffs for home. And this was the goal, and we've realized that we've actually got falcons back on cliffs in the Mississippi River where they belong.